So gonna explain the ether before I can get to Costco, which is like maybe 5 minutes. So the ether is a field that all fields come from, right? So it's like the grand unification theory when they're trying to unify gravity and electromagnetism. Gravity and electromagnetism are unified in the ether, and the ether, electromagnetism and gravity are both different behaviors of the ether, right? So it's like a word in science that they just kind of threw out, even though they still, like, the whole goal of science is to discover the ether for real. Like, everyone's kind of like thought the ether was wrong back in the day, but they're still saying, like, well, something has to unify gravity and electromagnetism, and that thing will be the same concept as ether, right? So the ether is like the substance of substances. And so since it's a field, since it's a substance, since it behaves like a field, like when we look at the world, it starts to have like wave-like patterns. And what does that mean? Is that the reality starts to act not like objects, but as perturbations in a field, right? When somebody goes, both everything is a wave and a particle, or matter is light and whatever. They go, when you look at the world really, really close, all the instrumentation starts to suggest that that's not an object there, it's actually a wave in a field. And the substance of the object is actually the field. And then that field is everywhere, and the only reason that the objects look different is because that field in that area is doing something different. And that's truly what everyone already believes. Like, something like the ether is a little bit, it's like on the doorstep of contemplating God or any of these like larger questions. And so you'll notice that there is already a lot is already known about it. So people go, oh yeah, there's not actually positive and negative, there's just one thing. So what does that mean? And it goes, well, the field of the medium at rest is at a level, it's at a volume, it's at a stasis, right? Every field has a resting point where it's like its boundaries are where they want to fall, and the surface of it is where it wants to be naturally. It's like its resting state. Every field has a resting state. And so that resting state, you can go away from it in both, basically always, you can go away from the resting state in two directions. Like, however you're going to conceptualize the resting state, like any position or any location, you can also fathom or come up with ways to go away from that, and they always come in sets or opposites of each other in a way. It's always that, because that resting place is always between two things. And so a field polarizes, and so when the field goes down, there's an absence of the field, and all of the field moves out of the way to create an absence, but everything wants to come back together to like bring the water back to level, right? So if you push things down in the water, they start to have a charge. It's what makes them charged. So when you disturb the ether down into the ether, things become what we'll label as positively charged. If things come up, like if the wave starts to come up, if something is taking place above the surface of the water, we'll call that negatively charged, and it wants to go down. And so the total force of positive and negative charge seems to be based off of where it is in relationship to something else, but you're just looking at the distance from the resting place, so the distance from like how high up a wave is its charge. Because if you were to just somehow stop that wave from moving or rolling, all of a sudden you just have a big mound of water, and it would just need to fall down to baseline. Like that's what look at a big rolling wave, and it's like all that water is lifted up out of, like you're lifting the water up, and so it wants to fall back down. That pull, the energy behind that falling is what we've labeled charge. So lifting something up, you have a big mass of field. You've got a big chunk of field, like a big chunk of substance of what is. And so that looks like electrons. That looks like the electromagnetic field. That looks like something. Right? All things, all of this stuff, when you dig into it, this has to do with like the electrons, the electromagnetic field, the thingness, right? The thingness of the ether is everything that you're touching. So when you have a bunch of it, we say that most of that thingness is caused by electrons. Like that's the outside of atoms. We say the outside of atoms that we interact with, that we actually touch or rebound off of, is electrons. Right? I don't think that's the best label for it, but we're just saying like that's where I'm talking about, is the outside of stuff. Right? Physics words don't just talk about like, you know, the high school ball diagram of an atom, that's where an electron is. It's like, no, they're right here. Right? That's what we're talking about. And so that's also what we're talking about when we're talking about electricity. And so when you take, that's why we find that type of polarization is negative, because we've assigned electricity with negative, sort of. So it's a negative charge accumulation. It's a, like, power is electricity, is this. That's just how it ended up linguistically. I think it's probably true, right? And then when you have an absence of charge, right, if you push it down, if you push the water out of the way, if you create a divot, if you create a pocket, if you create a bubble, you have an absence of something, and that is a pull up towards the surface. And so all things are going to be on the surface of reality. So that positive, negative charge are always pulled towards something on the surface. And people have confused that. So they think the positive and the negative charges are attracted towards each other, or that reality works in that sort of way. It doesn't work in this billiard ball way. So thinking about the ether and charge and electricity and all that is I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, it's not possible. Like if you take in the normal science that they teach, those concepts make thinking about ether or electricity or time like impossible. Absolutely impossible. Wild. It's wild, kids. Be careful which types of wisdom you ingest and in what order, because what you learn determines what you can learn. Right? If you learn something stupid at a very foundational level, you can't think about anything. Everything will be stupid downstream of that. So yeah, if you wanted to keep people out of this stuff, if you want to keep people out of the ether, you could just teach them to think like kind of materialistically. And ether and electricity and Tesla stuff, it becomes the most counterintuitive thing in the world. Life, medicine, biology, like, whoa. If you like that's why people are so mesmerized by science, is because the foundational precepts of like what's going on in the most simple terms possible was, I think, intentionally made retarded. And then once you've adopted those foundational retardations, those beliefs, then you don't even have to You don't have to censor information. You don't have to deal with, if you can get a foundational retardation inserted into a population, you can prevent entire categories of thought. It becomes impossible. It becomes the most counterintuitive, confusing thing in the world. And then even if somebody becomes interested in it, they have no means of evaluating any of the information whatsoever intuitively. So they become stuck in a thing. And then to try and wrestle with that will cause mental illness and schizophrenia. To try and remove like these big retardations. It's a big traumatic, it's an ordeal to remove one of these incorrect things that you learn at like 3 or 4 or 7 or whatever. It's a huge deal. Look at all the self-work and personality stuff that people get into of like, how do I undo all the stuff that was done to me? And it's like, honey, that's been happening to everybody scientifically. That is the conversation on Aether. That is the conversation on history. That is the conversation of a lot of this stuff. And it's like, even, right, not even half the population has figured out that there's something retarded going on. But then even a smaller fraction below that have figured out how to like stop egoically identifying with what's retarded, right? Like addressing this takes you quickly into the realm of like, only the most spiritual person on the world can help me through these waters. Of like seeing and letting go of my own willful retardation, right? At that point, you're like, oh, anybody capable of doing that is held up on a pedestal right next to Christ, right? So it's not any small ordeal to try and even have a dialogue or a discussion about something like Aether. And it drives people insane, you know. Seeing this stuff and not being able to communicate, seeing this stuff and seeing millions, if not billions of dollars of resources funneled into this, both via ignorance and via other groups and people who know this and have used it in cynical means, in cynical ways. And then seeing you're a victim of it and just seeing how deep everything goes. And so that's how, like, that's two-dimensional. So imagine this is happening in 3 dimensionals. If you want to see this happening in 3 dimensions or multiple surfaces connected, just look at a hurricane or a vortex or a double toroid, and you can see how, like, different layers and membranes of things can, you can get the surface of a medium or the surface of a field can not just wave, but it can generate like a repeating torus energy shape, like same surface cycling out like kind of forever, like just so you can see that in a hurricane. People can computer model it, and so you get this thing where there's like at the center of the vortex there's a pocket, there's an absence. So that's like, it's still just the bottom of a wave. If you dig into a hurricane, it's still just a wave, and the bottom of the wave is like in the eye, and all of the rest of the wave is like wrapped around it. And so that's where you get this vortex thing going. But at the end of the day, there's not anything at the middle, right? So there's not there's not exactly protons and stuff like that at the middle of atoms, or at the middle of mass, at the middle of you're looking at a vortexy toroidal thing where there's a pocket, or there's an absence of magnetism, there's an absence of the electromagnetic field, and which is like the bottom of the wave. And so the bottom of the wave is controlling the trough of the wave, and that's, you just get this like condensed stillness, emptiness thing, or the madness of the tornado around it. And that's every atom. Like that's what's going on in the ether, where it transitions from energy or electromagnetism or just this medium to an object, is when these cyclonic like behavior patterns happen. Everything from like atoms to people, planets and stuff. And then that's the ether. What? Fuji? Yeah, we're here. You're right. Okay, let's go.